budget workshop to order. Starting with public comment pertaining to agenda items only. Marcia, do we have any public comments? No public comments. We'll move right on to workshop items, and that would be the general fund. Start that 3-minute timer, Marcia.
Is that first slide? Good evening, Mayor and Council, or afternoon, early evening, whichever we are at. As you know, this is our first budget workshop. We had the first reading of the budget Tuesday. And so this is our workshop that we go through general fund as well as some of the other funds. And then we'll do CIP at the budget workshop on May 30th. And that's when we usually also have some of our partners here to address like Bluffton, the Palmetto Breeze, as well as Chamber, thank you very much. The DMO to talk about their plan for next year. And so we'll have those at May 30th. And then we have second reading scheduled for June 11th, as well as a public hearing for that night. So some of this is going to look familiar from the other night, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it, because if anybody is not present would like to see, they can go back to the presentation that I gave Tuesday to see the discussion related to that. So again, we've talked about some of the economic factors. The one thing I would add that we updated, I think, since Tuesday, is we put in the new area median income for Beaufort County for 2024. So for your reference, that has increased for individual to just short of 74,500. It's 74,480. Last year it was about 66 and change, almost 67,000. So since just 2024, the area median income has gone up to 74,480 for an individual. For one individual, for a family of four, it's like 104,000. But that's that bottom number right there under income. We just got that number this week, so we updated it within the presentation. So I wanted to make sure, just kind of point that out. We talked about economic drivers on Tuesday. And then some of the other economic factors are bond rating, our credit. And then we also talked about how the goal of the budget is to work to deliver council strategic plan priorities. As we do strategic planning, the goal of that is to make sure we have priorities from council that are shared by staff that we make sure that we put into the budget process to work to accomplish. So as you can see, we're focusing on numerous things that are in strategic planning, including capital projects, affordable housing, watershed, and partnerships to protect our river. I'm going to go through the proposed budget, several different funds. What's the spacing on? Is there? Sorry, I apologize.
I don't know why it's off.
Anyway, I apologize. Some of the slides have not lined up the way we had hoped. So
We know what they are.
I'm going to go through the general fund, special revenue fund, stormwater, debt tonight. And then we'll, like I said, we'll do capital projects the next week. So we're going to go through the proposed consolidated budget. So this is all of our funds together that we're going to, for the overall budget. You can see the general fund, special revenue fund, stormwater, capital, and debt. As you can see, overall, we're about 1.8 million below. Most of that is in the reduction for our CIP, like we talked about. I will make a note that that number has changed since Tuesday, because we've found out that we're pre-approved for that 140, or should be approved at the next meeting with the Regional Housing Trust Fund for that 144,000 grant to assist with the neighborhood assistance program with home renovations. So we went ahead and we've updated that number to include that potential grant coming in. So that adjusted our income on the general fund side slightly and reduced the amount that the decrease was from Tuesday. So, but it is exactly a 2% decrease from the current fiscal year. And you can see where that's coming from. General fund slightly up, special revenue funds are down, stormwater's up, and CIP is down, and then debt service is up slightly to lead to where we are. So again, some of our highlights. This recognizes a little bit of slowdown in the growth that we've seen over the last year. It also maintains our property tax millage the same as it is for our current fiscal year at 36 mills. And as we talked about, the goal is to focus on town council priority programs, and some of those are outlined there. It also works to make sure we stay competitive in our pay for our employees. As you'll hear me talk about it, when it comes to our organization, having quality employees and recruiting and retaining them is one of the most important things we do. To be able to deliver services to our citizens, it takes our employees as well as our equipment and facilities to be able to do so. So making sure we have quality in all of those is important. And then it also invests in our public infrastructure. These are where most of our CIP projects are that we'll talk about in a couple weeks, but it's public sewer, streetscapes, parks, as well as other capital projects throughout the town.
So again, we're still off. Will you go see if you can find the older presentation?
We can run it directly from DMS. Okay. That's the downloaded version.
I apologize. Give us a second because it's going to drive me crazy that this is off as we go through. I'll keep talking
and she pulls that up. Well, no, I won't.
Well, we got our book right here.
sorry.
If you could tell us what page to go to, we could follow along.
Or no, you don't have the presentation, do you? No. So, give us just a minute because it does have some budget numbers in here that as we get into the meat of the general fund, we start talking about some of the obligations and budget numbers that are associated with that, and I'd rather y'all be able to see them.
Stephen, you mentioned Palmetto Breeze a minute ago. Did you say they were coming in to speak to us?
We invite them to come in and speak at the second one.
Because we could certainly use that update. And one thing I'm curious about, I don't know whether their path has been established. It's been enough time, but they had talked about building those little bus stops. And I don't think they've ever built one.
See, Fred's name's off there. Yeah, let's drop in.
Tracy, can I save it into the P drive or something?
If you want, yeah, we can give it a try.
Okay.
I apologize.
See if it's. I'm just saving it right in the P drive.
Put one in from it. Let's see.
Maybe if you sort by date modified, hopefully it's popping at the top. There it goes.
Thank y'all for your patience.
So everything is aligned.
Line there now. So here's where we were. As we get into our interagency partnerships, as you were asking about Palmetto Breeze, I wanted to have the numbers up here so you can see what those partnerships represent within the budget and the what's being allocated associated with that. So as you can see, Palmetto Breeze is just about just short of about $150,000 for our area local match, and that's based on our calculation of population that is served by the service. So that's where our number comes from, and it is the same as it was the year before. Public defender contract, we're recommending to extend that again for next year, and that number is the same. And then working with the town, with USCB for their lab and microbial testing. We have an agreement with those authorized last year to update the amounts and follow along what that cost is. The Town of Bluffton Ambassador Program, that's to continue that from previous years. And then we also have our partnerships with Beaufort County School Districts and the one private school to provide school resource officers, so that gives you the breakdown of what that is. And then Don Ryan Center for Innovation. And then a note for our accommodations tax. As we've talked about, we are going to begin recommending to use the 15% that the state amended the law to allow us to use for affordable housing. What was being recommended is for 15% that we're allowed to take within the state to go to our CIP projects, which would be like our, the project at 1095 May River Road that we're getting ready to ground break on the 30th. That would be funds that could be used to support programs like, or projects like that. And the other 15% with the local aid tax would go to our general fund to support programs like our neighborhood assistance program, our partnership with the Regional Housing Trust, and other type of partnership programs. And again, if you have any questions on anything as I go through, please feel free to stop, and I'll be more than glad to go in to answer any questions. So, as we do every year, we review our master fee schedule. There are a couple fees that we're looking to address. One is adding a USB thumb drive cost. Used to be you could put everything on a CD drive. Can't do that anymore now, so if it starts getting to a point where we need to get like a 4 gig or 8 gig thumb drive, there's a cost for to be able to provide that to somebody if they come in and ask for a ton of documents that ends up pushing beyond what we can get on a CD drive. So the request for that is to put it in there for $20 to cover the cost for us to being able to keep those and also provide that to them to keep. Under growth management fees, there's an amendment to the building safety fees, and that's to just add additional language about the 4th copy of building plans for rechecking and stuff like that. And Kevin's here if you have questions on exactly what that entails. I had to look for a second because he was cooking today for Richard's retirement party, so I did not recognize him with his hat on in the meeting. And then the plan checking fees for doing remarking, rechecking of residential plans, recommending that it go from 50 to 100 to be consistent with other fees that we charge within permitting fees.
Does each time you check, it's another 100?
Yes, correct.
So that's, so do we normally have 4 recheckings or 3, or
When
what?
when they lose plans, if someone loses a plan and then they come in and then they want to get another stamped copy of it, we then have to make sure that the plan that they are bringing in matches what was actually approved to then be able to stamp that. And it's very time consuming to make sure, because you have to look through the entire set of plans, and that might be 30 or 40 pages worth of information to make sure that it is consistent with what was approved. This is for building plans.
So the only other way you could do it is just print the entire
Right.
plan and stamp it, because you know you'd be printing the same thing that you got earlier.
Correct.
But you would still have the time and the expense of.
Yes.
Yeah, they're printing a set of plans on our plotter, and that cost will probably be similar. Any additional questions for Kevin on that? And then the other one we had in here was the stormwater management fee, and we discussed this when we went through the initial budget. And most of it is adding a reinspection resulting from a stop work order. So if we do a stop work order and they have to go out and do a reinspection before they can start work up again, as part of that stop work order, there would be an additional fee for them to come out and do that reinspection. It's part of that discouraging people from getting to a point where we have to issue a stop work order, but also the fact that staff has to go out and actually inspect to make sure that we've got everything in place before we can release them back out to work. Any questions on that?
How many of those do you have a year?
Notice of violations.
It's in the, off the top of my head, I do not know, sir. It's in the monthly update though from the department, and Watershed keeps a running tally of stop work orders as well as notices of violation and a bar chart that's presented. I can look that up and send you an email, but I just don't know off the top of my
I
head.
don't know whether whether it's a large number or a small number?
For stop work orders, relatively frequent.
Okay.
Notices of violation,
Okay.
not nearly as frequent, just a handful, thankfully.
But would you say stop work orders is once a week?
Once every couple of weeks,
Yeah.
So the notice of violation is when you actually find them,
potentially, yes, sir.
but basically you're giving them a notice of violation whenever you tell them to stop doing what they're doing.
It depends. We're getting into legal, and I'm gonna look at Richardson, and I'm gonna look at you, my court lady. I don't deal with the legal side of stormwater, so in the enforcement response plan, yes, there are the inspections. You are found not to be compliant, you can be given a notice of violation and a re-inspection. If you found not to be compliant again, it can go to a citation, which then would come into the court. Dependent upon, these are the illicit discharge detection. These are people discharging from RVs sewage onto the ground. I mean, it's extreme. And when we get to those cases, for stop work orders, this is typically non-compliance for sediment and erosion control issues.
So for example, like stop work order, we found somebody who,
Or
might have
dewatering.
been moving dirt somewhere, for example, we have one on, I think Buck Island, Simmonsville, where they were moving dirt, up near, where Bridget lives. They actually went out and were grading, and they had pulled up actually the covers off of septic tanks. When you put a stop work order, told them to come in, so before they'd be able to do anything, there'd be a fee and all that for us to go back out and make sure they had everything in place before they could start back up. So, again, it's kind of a penalty for operating without doing things properly.
That's just like when the guys were cutting those trees down and stuff on Buck Island, right? That's from Eagles Field when I called you that day and they didn't have their permits, so.
Yeah, and then we put a stop work order out there because they didn't have their silt fence, so they didn't have anything in place. Yeah, permit or nothing, yeah.
It's
stop work order.
no procedure.
Sorry. So when stormwater has to go out and actually inspect before they can start back, that's what that fee is for.
Would you like the numbers?
Oh, thank you, Heather.
What'd you find? This is for the year?
Okay, so for 2024 year-to-date, for notice of violations, we've had 14. And then citations, we've issued 15. So that means that more than likely we've had a couple that had to get a couple citations before they came into compliance. And then we've had 30 illegal discharge investigations that we've done that led to 14 notice of violations and 15 citations.
Thank you.
Any other questions on those? All right, so I'm going to get into the general fund now. Again, this is where the town's primary operating fund, where we operate day to day out of. Talked about a value of our mill on Tuesday and how it has increased about $90,000 over the previous fiscal year from the growth and the value of property going up. As you can see, again, we're proposing to keep our millage the same at 36 mills. That's 34.3 for operating, and then 1.7 for our debt service millage rate. So where do the revenues come from? Doing the pie chart first, then we'll go into the numbers. As you can see, property taxes, license and permits are our two biggest. Do have a slide in here to show our grants and entitlements, because as we mentioned, that number actually went up from last time because we have a potential new grant. So we'll go through kind of what we've gotten grants for to show where that number is more than doubled where it was the previous year.
Stephen, do all the property taxes go into the general fund?
Yes, except for,
The TIF goes into the TIF fund.
but anything else that is property taxes go directly into the property taxes.
Yes, sir.
So TIF fund taxes go to pay the TIF.
So 50%
That goes into a whole different fund.
of property taxes in the TIF go to the debt service fund.
Right.
Fund debt service and projects that are within the TIF, and the other 50% of TIF revenue goes directly to the general fund.
And then when the TIF expires, all of that revenue will start going directly to the general fund.
So and I just need clarification, I know y'all are smart. So on the consolidated budget, you you have, a proposed property taxes of 15,159,000. And then on the general fund, you have a proposal of 10 million. So where does that, I'm trying to figure, where does that other 5 million go? Or
Say that again.
okay, on our property tax column on the general fund budget on page 66, the proposed budget for property taxes is 10 million for this year, for 25. 24 was 9.2. But if you look at the consolidated budget, the 24 revised budget was 12,873,000. The proposed 25 budget there is 15,159,000.
Yeah, so that's what is going to the debt service fund. That's your
5 million?
that's your TIF property taxes.
Oh, okay, I wasn't thinking it was a number, but if that's what it is, I
4.7, yeah.
thank you, I just need to, caught my eye.
So, if you're talking about the numbers, here's the numbers on the revenue side. And that's where you're referring to with the property tax at 10 million. You can see that's about about 8% increase over where it was the previous year. Talked a little bit about the municipal association insurance tax. That's what they collect and distribute back to us, going up about 18%. You can see again, building permits going down about 30% based on what our trends are for what we've seen with growth, permitting, and making sure that we stay realistic on our expectations of there based on as we move forward in the next fiscal year. And then grants and entitlements, like I mentioned earlier, that's up almost 100%, and the vast majority of that is in a police grant that we received, and we'll have a slide in here to go through that a little more in detail. So the grants and entitlements, as you can see, it's a little short of $3 million for this year. And that's about, again, double of what it was last year. Most of that is local government fund. That's year over year. We received that from the state. It is going up as they increase their budget. They're required to, as their budget increases, they're required to increase their contribution up to 5%, depending on the budget. So that number is going up. The federal grant we received from Senator Graham's office through working on that, we were getting $1.348 million for police equipment upgrades. That's going for portable radios, tasers, car cameras, body cameras, portable fingerprint machine, and so forth.
Well, in parentheses, it says take place of polygraph test.
So,
What
yes.
does that mean?
So what a lot of agencies across the country are doing is they're going to a voice stress analyzer, which is proven to be more accurate than a polygraph. And any officer can get trained in it, and they use these, they actually measure the stress in your voice when you're asking the same questions as you would on a polygraph. Right now, we pay our polygrapher $400 every time he comes in, and so we would have our own officers be able to do that now.
And majority of the times when we bring for a polygraph, it is for our, going through the hiring process for our officers. Part of our hiring process is we do a polygraph for every officer that everybody that's in the hiring process. They don't get to that point until they get through some of the other steps, but we do a polygraph for every potential candidate.
This will also speed up the process as well, because for example, we have 2 people scheduled for polygraph now, and he can't see him for another 2 weeks. And so this will speed up the process. It's more accurate, it's proven accurate, and it's down the line, it's going to be more efficient for us.
Can it be used in the court of law
Yes, it can. Well,
as evidence, or?
I don't think it's recognizable in criminal court cases, but neither is polygraph.
Yeah, I knew that. That's what.
So you're gonna get rid of all your tasers? Can I have the old ones?
Dating's hard, isn't it, Fred? I have 2 questions. So the first one on the local government fund, is that a pass-through LOCOG, or does that pass directly to the municipality?
It passes to the municipalities from the municipal associate, or from the state of South Carolina.
Okay. And regarding the 1.3, almost 1.4 million grant from the federal government. So did we request this particular dollar amount, or is this something he just felt that he could get for us, or?
We requested a particular dollar amount. We had equipment that was coming up for replacement, mostly radios, the tasers. The radios is the big one. They're having to update our radios to meet requirements by 2025 or 26?
26.
So we were actually looking at a 3-year replacement cycle where it totals several $100,000 each year. And so we reached out to Senator Graham's office and said, we know we have this cost. Is there any way we can get a grant to offset that? And we added that, our mobile data computers, what they keep in the cars and so forth, things that we knew we were coming up on replacement, and asked, and that's what the total ended up coming up to be. And Senator Graham was willing to put that in his earmarks, and it passed the budget. So we asked and he provided.
Thank you.
What, just on that same thing, is there a number of associated to this, like, are we getting 20, are we getting 40, are we getting 10, or?
Related to like the radios or
Well, yeah, everything that we're getting, or everything that this money can be used for, basically. You know, the data computers.
breakdown of what we requested, yes, sir.
I mean, it's just,
So pretty much we're replacing every radio and base station
all
within
the radios will be, everybody will get a new radio.
And tasers, and yes, sir.
Yeah, so we're not just replacing a part, we're replacing all.
Right, I was just wondering how many.
We can get the breakdown of what the
Yeah,
request
and
was
it's,
and tell you like what
it's
all.
not, I mean, if that's what it is, I'm fine with that. I didn't know if we're getting 10 of each, or we're getting enough to
No,
outfit
this is,
the entire
this,
force.
we're, like with these, we knew we were getting to the point where we had to replace all of them. So instead of trying to figure this out and budget like a third, and do this over 3 years, we asked Senator Graham and just tried to knock it out all at once.
Good job.
And I'll have to thank Felicia. I sent it to her and Chris and said, hey, is this something we think we can get in on? And she had literally like 30 hours to submit it, pulled it together, and we ended up getting it.
Awesome.
So for the school resource officers, those are state grants that go to the school district, and then they fund those to us, and they pay for 75% of the officers.
So our sworn officers are class ones, it's 75-25.
And then for our new SRO Class 3, it's 100% they pay for, and they operate off of the same schedule as the like teachers do. And then a local grant, again, we added this in where we have pre-approval for funding for a $144,000 grant, and that's up to $9,000 per home to add to our neighborhood assistance program and be able to allow it to go further and help more people next year. And just a note, we're not replacing any funding that we put in place with this. We're actually supplementing the funding that we originally, so you'll see when we get to there, the original we had put in there was $400,000 for that program. It will now be $544,000. So where do those funds go in the general fund? Again, talked about how we like to take care of our people. A little over half goes for salaries and benefits. About a third goes to our operating, a little over 3% to capital outlay, and then a little over 3% goes to capital funds for projects, or CIP for projects.
And I hate to ask this again, because you told me the last time, capital outlay is,
Anything that we're purchasing over 1,000, 5,000? 5,000. So here's a numerical breakdown of that. And then one of the things I wanted to hit is because you can see the operating increasing significantly over last year is what is making up that. So it's up about $2.5 million. Some of that is the operations of the new Welcome Center that we're opening. There's a cost to operate that and expand our civic event programs. That's concert, movie series, and so forth. Doing a parks master plan study. We're doing a lot of, we're wrapping up a lot of improvements on our parks. We're getting to the point where I want to do a study of the parks we have, like the ones where we're acquiring land, and see what our next proposed, what we're missing, what gaps we have, so we can bring that back to council during strategic planning and work and say, okay, here's what we offer here, here's what we offer there, here, because we've got other parks throughout the town we haven't really programmed yet. Because we have land out near New Riverside, we have the land that we've bought on Buck Island, and try to look and see what we want to do and what may be recommended to bring back to council for that.
So all of those two, Stephen, are totally outside of not included in the actual CIP.
Correct. Because it's a study, not an actual, what it will do is generate CIP or capital improvement projects for future years. So we would do the study for next year, and then it will generate the projects for future years. And really give us what we're looking for is like a 5-10 year project list to bring to council so that we can start programming and planning and budgeting for those things.
Let me ask a question I always ask, and you always answer. MC Riley, any word from the county?
The last I heard from the county is we gave them an idea of some improvements that would be beneficial out there, kind of redoing the baseball fields. They seem interested in moving forward with that.
They seem interested in moving forward with,
Doing improvements to MC Riley.
but no idea when.
I have not received any update on when that time frame may be. I've also told them that should they not want to make improvements on that, and it's a park that the town may be interested in taking that park over. But as of now, they seem interested. They have a new Parks and Rec director. They're waiting to see who their new administrator is going to be, but that is something I think that they have as an interest, is to move forward with doing some renovations out there. But until they get a permanent leader within the county, I won't know whether that's going to be something that's a priority or what the time frame may be. I hit on these a little bit on Tuesday. A couple new programs that are recommended for our employees. One is the Home Buyer Assistance Program. The other is an employee wellness clinic where they would be here several hours throughout the week. We have the Neighborhood Assistance Program in there. Like I said, that with the grants, that's $144,000. That would be increased to that, as well as we're looking to fund it at $100,000 higher than what we did in the current fiscal year. So that's about $244 increase there. And then again, the big one is the police, the funding we're getting from the grant, the $1.3 million, that's making up over half of what that increase is in the operating. So one of the things I wanted to kind of show on there is with the study, the temporary, like the grant that we're getting from the Neighborhood Assistance Program and the equipment for the PD, almost like 70% of what we have that increase in operating is one-time funds that are showing that revenue, that expense going up. Like I said, 1.3 million of it's the grant for the police. When that's done, that revenue will disappear off, or expense will disappear off the books. So some of the other expenditure highlights, talking about 2% COLA for employees. Again, like to show what that accounts to when we look in the budget. So doing a 2% increase for pay for all of our employees is about $278,000. A 2% mid-year merit increase is $144,000. We have both of those within the budget. Also includes the PTO payout option for 25 hours throughout the year. That's about $70,000. You can see the increase to our employee health insurance at 11.8% is over $200,000. And then the new positions that are, any questions on those numbers or what those are? I always like y'all to understand, like when we're talking about doing a 2% COLA or 2% merit, what that actually relates to in the budget. And then the new positions proposed for the Welcome Center, like I talked about on Tuesday, we propose a full-time and part-time position to run that position. Those two positions will report to Lindy and underneath Debbie's team and communications and community outreach. And the police, I mentioned the full-time community relations manager. And then there's one additional part-time position to increase crossing guards to 8. That's the one I mentioned at May River. That, again, that will be grant cover. That will be part of our agreement with the school district, so that's at no additional cost to the town. And then public services, we are recommending 3 public service worker positions.
So all of those, I mean, all that's basically revenue neutral.
So for
The things like the crossing guards and different things that we're being reimbursed for.
The only ones that are not revenue neutral are the community relations manager for the police and the public service workers. The crossing guard, yes, the people, the part-time and full-time at the at the Welcome Center, those will be funded by accommodations, hospitality taxes, things that we can transfer in because that's what those funds are available for, is to operate those kind of programs. So we'll be covering them underneath those funds. But within the general fund, the only positions that will be true new expenses without funds transferring in to cover them are the community relations manager and the 3 public service workers. So I started adding this in last year because one of the things that we always talk about is making sure that we're working to get our pay up for our employees. Right now, our minimum hourly rate is $20.40 an hour. As we work to increase COLA, that number will continue to go up. But we've made it an effort over the last few years with the push from council to get our minimum pay up to $20 an hour, so that will continue to climb. And we do have the class and compensation study increase in here as well. So between the merit and the class and comp, everybody will be eligible for between 2 to 7% increase based on the class and comp study. And the goal is to implement that class and comp study over this next fiscal year budget, 24-25, as well as a 25-26 budget. And the goal would be that anybody who is at 14% below their market rate, they would get 7% this year and 7% next year. If you are, say, 10% below market rate, you would do your 7% this year, and then you would get the 3% next year. So we didn't have the funds to kind of take that big bite of the apple all at once. So we wanted to do some this year and look at doing some next year so we can take care of our employees, but implement it year over year. The one thing I would mention with that is the class and comp did not include our officers. If you remember back in, I think it was October, when we did adjustment to millage rates for assessment, we adjusted police officer pay at that time. What the goal would be is, and Chief and I have talked about this, is later this calendar year for him to do a study of seeing where he is in comparison to his related departments and bring any proposed change he may have for the next fiscal year when we're looking to do the second year implementation for the class and comp, is to get the second step of class and comp and any increase that may need to include the police as well. So that would be as part of the 25-26 budget.
Question. You said that, you're still working to get minimum wage, the $20, minimum to all employees?
No, sir. We did that 2 years ago. I said and with y'all's input, we worked to get it to there.
Okay.
So this year, when we did our COLA, it was 2%. Now our minimum is $20.40. So when we do our COLA again this year, we'll get up right at $21 an hour. What I like to show with this is you can see, like, we have 25 employees that are within the bottom bracket. We'll have 6 of those. As you can see, they start moving up. So we're getting people up within their compensation up. That's kind of represented here. So I showed this last year as well, so I wanted to show it again this year. So in the current fiscal year, when we started, our average wage that employees got were $72,000. Our median was $65,000. And then after our COLA and our mid-year merit increase, we're currently sitting where the average salary is just short of $75,000, and our median salary is just over $68,000. With what's proposed with class and comp, as well as our mid-year 2% merit, we'll be pushing where our average wage is just right at $80,000, and our median is just short of $72,500. So that gives you an idea of just since the start of this current fiscal year to where we'll be at next fiscal year, we're looking at almost a $7,500 increase, which is more than 10% increase for our average rate over the last, that'd be almost 18 months. So again, our goal we know with inflation, with the cost of living here, homes and all that, we're working to continue to get our average pay up and our median pay up for our employees to stay with our market within this area. Outside of working to get our the pay addressed, we also want to make sure our employees are supported. So this includes our professional development and staff certifications that we work to keep for all of our employees. Also works to keep our garbage service for our employees. Well, some of them that live in the town. For all of our citizens and keep it with weekly pickup. It also recognizes the increase that, our estimated increase based on our contract where it's capped out. So we go ahead and we assume it's going to increase at the max and make sure we're addressed for that.
But we did that at the time of reassessment as well. We allocated.
We did, but then every year they have in their contract that they have a CPI that they can go up, and it's capped, I think, at 3%. So they can go up CPI, but it's capped at 3%. So we recognize that it's probably going to go up the max, so we go ahead and budget.
But when they went up on us last year,
They go up.
That was
that was more than 3% that they went up.
Yeah, so they did a mid-year negotiation regarding recycling. So the recycling rate went up. And I don't remember the exact numbers, but.
So that the recycling rate is not on the same in the contract?
It is.
3%?
It is, and that's where they came to us and they said because the recycling market is not what it used to be, and they gave us some backup to show that it's costing more than what, pretty much they were going to have to tell us they'd have to either stop recycling or we would have to adjust rate. So what we did is we worked to get with them to get the rate up for recycling, but within their contract, when we get to the renewal period, they do have the ability, as long as CPI calls for it, but with inflation the way it is, we're assuming that 3% cap will be reached. If it doesn't, bonus, but we want to make that assumption again going in so we don't end up underestimating that cost. We also build in a little bit because we have, as growth goes up, I think Kevin gives us a list every week. You walk down. He gives us a list every week of how many COs they issue, and every week it seems to be between about 10 and 15 COs. So we know every week we have 10, 15 new cans that are being delivered that we've got to pay for. So we go ahead and put some estimated costs in there to cover that for the entire year. Again, talking about supporting our PD recruitment retention, our mental health programs, historic preservation, and then Don Ryan Center. So again, highlights that just some of the things that we prioritize throughout the budget. And then again, maintain our current level of support for our drug task force, investigations, domestic violence, our Stay Safe Bluffton program, which we will be giving our 4 scholarships. I think that's on the calendar for mayor to have the photo op for that, I think next week.
Which one?
The Stay Safe Bluffton.
Yeah.
Just show up when it pings. We'll do the photo op. And then, and also our crossing guards.
What's the value of those scholarships now?
They're $1,000, and we are able to give 4 this year. And that's money that's generated from the 5K. And also we've gotten, with our Christmas parade, when people register for the Christmas parade, we don't have a fee. We just say if they would like to donate to our scholarship, Stay Safe Bluffton Scholarship Program, that they can donate to that. And actually, it has generated enough to allow us to do additional scholarship by opening that up for donations during the Christmas parade.
That's great. I didn't know we had that going on.
Well, we started looking at doing a fee a couple years ago because we wanted to try to keep the number manageable. Right. And then we had some people say, like, instead of a fee, let's look at doing this. And so we put that out there, and it's actually generated a lot more money than when we tried the fee for the first time. So again, it's allowed us to actually give an additional scholarship than we did the previous years. We talked about the vehicle lease program the other night. This is year 4 or 5. And then the employee programs that I mentioned earlier, this kind of gives you the breakdown of what those fiscal costs are. We have 30,000 in there for the on-site employee wellness clinic, whether, again, like that's on-site or whether it's a bus, like through Beaufort Memorial, where they do the, on-site, medical, or if we, and the employee home buying program. So that's calling for a half year. That's an estimation. I can tell you where I did it previously, it was less, but again, things were a lot less 5 years ago or 3 years ago than they are now. So we're, giving a little, overestimation in there to make sure that we can pick up whatever the market, shows. On the employee home buying assistance program, we have it budgeted for the first year at 46,000. That kind of allows us to give one at each funding level that we're proposing. Like I mentioned last time, our goal is, should this continue through the budget, is to go to the Affordable Housing Committee in June, go through the program that we're looking to propose, and then bring that to council for adoption in July, get any input they may have, and then bring that to council to adopt the regulations for it in July, and then start offering it to our employees. Any questions on any of that?
I'm just curious, I wonder if there's a way to encourage the larger corporations, maybe, you know, I don't know whether they still do it or not. I know years ago, St. Joe Candler, for example, was doing that program in Savannah. Now, whether they're doing it in Bluffton or not, I do not have a clue.
You're talking about the home buying assistance?
The home assistance, they would make a mortgage down payment. They'd give them, you know, the employee, as long as the employee stayed there for 5 years or whatever, then that money went away. But I was just curious if we cannot, at some point, encourage some of our larger corporations to consider it. I mean, you have the Surge Group raising $15 million to go out and buy houses, you know, so.
Well, and I'll tell you that one of the people we're using as a guide for this is Beaufort Memorial Hospital. They do that for, and also the city or town of Goose Creek does this for their employees as well. So we've used them as guides for putting this program in place. Now, when you talk about the larger employees, that is something we could look to encourage.
Back when St. Joseph broke ground here, you and I were both there, to build a new facility, they said that they look forward to doing that in Bluffton.
Helping
Yeah.
affordable housing with Bluffton.
Right.
Right.
So I don't know if we need to, somebody needs to follow up with them, whether it's me or you or somebody, maybe Fred.
We have a affordable housing person, which is Vicky. We'll be more than glad
Yeah,
to
and
ask her to see what she can.
just remind them that when they were so happy about coming to Bluffton, they did say that they were going to do that. You know, or look forward to doing it. So.
More glad to do this.
I think you could advertise it too. If you get a handful of companies that may be potentially already doing it, we could send a message out there and hopefully attract new people.
I want to ask if you got any more questions again tonight.
I should learn by now, if you have questions, you're gonna ask them whether I pause or not, right?
Exactly.
You already said affordable housing 3 times and Fred hadn't said a word.
Hey, we made sure we searched everything for work. If something worked for shows up
That's
in
because you're
here.
getting too much money, you're not complaining.
Well, it just proves how big of a priority it is. So, and we take that as a
We all
priority.
support it.
So we're gonna go department here. This is where we get into just a little bit more detail of each department within the town. And we'll go through each one of these individually and talk about the changes that are taking place year over year and just what's kind of making up that, and answer any questions that you ask me as I continue forward. So just wanted to highlight, this shows you who makes up the biggest percent of the budget. As we know, that's Joe. The police department makes up about 37% of the overall budget. The next 2 biggest are growth management and public services. And then, as you can see, townwide is a large percent of the budget. That's where we pay for things like streetlights, trash collection, and stuff like that.
Where's Joe on here? I don't even see Joe on here.
Well, it says
Oh, I
police.
see it down there. Yeah, okay, sorry.
Yeah, he's the only one with 2 numbers in front of that comma. So, as you can see, that makes up about 96% of our budget. The other 3.5 go to transfer into the CIP for funding projects that we'll go over that in a couple weeks and talk about where that funds come from in the different CIP projects.
We're so little, we don't even get mentioned.
Those legislative.
You just don't have a 1 in front of your number yet. So again, this is proposed personnel. These are the different positions within the town. So you have the different departments on the left. The current is the fiscal year 24 budget. And if you go to the far right, you can see the proposed change. This mirrors what was shown in the presentation that I went through earlier, where you have the communications, the one full-time, one part-time, that's the Welcome Center. You'll see the 2 in the executive office, that's not 2 new positions. That's 2 that transferred in. That's Mark that moved in this year, and then the part-time position. Amanda, but it says full-time.
No,
Who's
it's the assistant town
Oh, Assistant Town Clerk Carrie, where we made Melinda's position full-time and moved Carrie from growth management. And then finance and administration, that's the overhiring that we did this current year, knowing that we had a retirement. That position's now going back away. And then in the police, you can see the civilian positions. That is one crossing guard and then the community outreach position. It's a total of 6 full-time. And 1 part-time.
So Stephen went like Mark that moved out of growth management? So are we getting, I'm looking at 24 and I'm looking at 25, you got 8. Well, you got the same amount there for 25 as you had in 24.
So if you look under the
And
project.
you got 2 more, in the executive than you had last year. So take 1 from one department, put it in
Yeah,
another.
so if you look under project management division, there's a -1. That's where Mark came from. And then the -1 part-time is Amanda, which is our acquisitions, the one that's helping with all the ghost roads and acquisitions for projects, for land acquisition. And then the 2 that's an executive, one of those is Mark, and then the other is Carrie, where we moved her. Got you. So, and we'll show these because when we do the departmental budgets, we show the budget and we show the number of positions as well. So we'll go through department by department and kind of highlight a couple notes on the bottom for each of them. So this gives you the salary, benefits, and operating. This is communications and community outreach. Again, you'll see an increase here. If you go down into the staffing levels, you'll see that 1 part-time, 1 full-time. This is where the Welcome Center is going to be under. So that's where their increase is coming from in there, as well as the 2 new positions. One of the other things that we're doing is there's a increased budget for events throughout the year for next year. If you look at our SIL, the established date is 1825. So 2025 is our bicentennial of our establishment date. So we're planning to do additional events or upgrade some of our events in 2025 as part of our bicentennial celebration for the town. So we're planning for that now. Now that's not our charter date, but it's on our SIL as our established date. So we're celebrating it. We'll celebrate both. It's kind of like Fred's birthday. You celebrate it all month long. We're going to celebrate all year long. No. I apologize, Councilman Hamilton's birthday. Not meaning to be so informal. As we go into DRCI, as you can see, their budget's a little less than it was previous year. It's just a reduction in some operating. It does, our economic development incentive program that Chris has worked to get in place. DRCI is the department that really handles that. So they're working on putting a website to market that, and they're going to be the ones that are out there pushing for any economic development. As with the one that we're doing on our project on Buckwalter, when that building is turned back over to the town as a landing pad and growth spot, DRCI will be the ones that manages the building and as well as the occupants that go within there and rent the spaces. So continuing to make that priority of them being the economic development arm for the town. So the executive, this is where, like I said, you can see it adds a CIP project and acquisition manager, part-time as well. We are adding in, a new program. It's called, Clear Plans. And what we're doing is with our strategic planning, it's going to be a way for us to get our strategic planning on our more present. It's actually the same program that we're using for our budget and CIP, and they will all tie together. So it's like budget updates on how on an expense for a CIP project, it'll update the percent spent on the CIP, the completion, and all of that can be updated within our strategic planning documents to show updates as there. So the goal is to try to get more information out to the public and make it easier and clearer to access, easier to access and clearer to see. It is also, we did a community survey last year. We had mentioned when we did that in 2 years, we wanted to do an update to that and then do a comparison of where we were last year to next year. So we have that in there. It does remove our election expense that we had this year, but our survey is more expensive than that. So there's a little increase for that, about $10,000, $15,000. But all that's reflected in the increase that you see there, as well as the Parks and Rec master plan is within our budget. So the finance, they're pretty much holding steady. It's a 0.2% increase. And then you can see for them, there's a staffing level decrease of 1 position. That was the overhiring that we did for the retirement of Cindy. And that position is going away since it's been filled and we no longer, as we said last year when we put that position in there, it would go away after we got through the fiscal year. So growth management department, their operations is up a good bit. A good portion of that is the increase in the neighborhood assistance program. As I mentioned earlier, we are recommending that it be increased $100,000 over what we budgeted this current year. And then with the $144,000 grant, that means that it will be going up $244,000, which is the vast majority of the operating expense increase that you see there. Part of that increase is, again, software that we are looking to do for our UDO. Once it is implemented, it will make our UDO searchable. It will make it a whole lot easier to access. So we're excited about getting that done. And that will, once the budget's approved, that will be done one of the first things in the fiscal year. So I mentioned the neighborhood assistance program. I wanted to just kind of highlight what has been the proposed breakdown for the budget for this year. So you can see where we were in 2024 for home repair. We had $269,000 budgeted. For fiscal year 25, that's proposed to be $494,000 with the grant. I think if we gave Vicki a blank checkbook, she could spend more than that throughout the year. But that is continuing to keep that program funded where it matches the demand in the community. So as you can see, that total proposed budget was $290,000 in the current fiscal year. It's proposed to be $544,000 in next fiscal year's budget.
So on the proposed budget, are we bumping up the tree mitigation?
Yes, about 5,000.
No, but we can move money around if we need to.
Well, it is showing a slight increase from 10.5 to 15, but again, that money can move. Yeah. It doesn't.
I'm fine with that. I was just saying.
That's one of the funds where it's hit and miss. We may spend it some. If not, we can move it around for other programs as we need throughout the year. Next is human resources. As you can see, they're pretty much holding steady. They're down about 1%. One of the things I did want to highlight in here, there's 2 items that we're looking at for next fiscal year that are new. A couple of these will come next month as we look to make some proposed amendments to our employee personnel manual. One is the state just adopted a paid maternal leave or parental leave, and we want to mirror what the state adopted for their employees. Which
State of South Carolina
State of South Carolina did that,
Wow.
their budget, with their budget this year.
Go figure.
So they offer 6 weeks for the primary caregiver, which is usually the one giving birth, and then 2 weeks for the supporting caregiver, which is usually the spouse.
You're
So-
smart, Stephen. You got that all figured out, eh?
So, again, when I talk about things like this, I like to say we budget 100% of our employees' salaries, whether it comes out of PTO, whether it comes out of paid maternal or paternal leave, or whether it comes out of holidays, or whether it comes out of them actually working. 100% of their salary is always budgeted, and that's what all they're going to be paid throughout the year, regardless of whether they're taking it for maternal leave, they take it FMLA, they take it as PTO. We always have that 100% budgeted that they're going to get paid throughout the year. So what this is, it just recognizes a benefit that says that when you have a child or you adopt a child, that there's a demand for that person to be with that child when you're first born and not have to take all your PTO as part of that.
Also, adoption is even,
Adoption allows 2 weeks.
thank you.
So, and again, this mirrors what the state of South Carolina implemented for all of their employees this year, so we would like to implement it as well.
So what did we do before?
Nothing. You just took your PTO and FMLA.
You didn't give any paternal?
You took FMLA, which allows you 12 weeks of leave, but you would have to take your PTO while you were out. This would allow you paid leave without having to take your PTO.
But what if you didn't have that much PTO,
Then you took it unpaid,
unpaid?
Yes, sir. Up to 12 weeks. The other thing that we would like to add in is President's Day as a town holiday. We're the only government within the county that does not celebrate President's Day. So if it's something that council is good with, our holidays are within our personnel manual that council has adopted by resolution. What we would do is we would look to amend that to show that as a town holiday. And when we bring that in June for council to look at some updates, then we would have that as an update that council could vote on. So we can discuss that further in June. But that's just a couple things that are, I wanted to highlight in here that you would be seeing again. But if you ask what the cost is, ultimately, it doesn't change how much is budgeted. It just changes which fund we pay, which line out, like which accounting code they get paid out of whenever we pay them. But it doesn't change anything within the budget to be able to provide that program or that service or that benefit. Does that make sense?
How about if President's Day, it's always a Monday, right?
Yes.
I was thinking if it hit on,
Weekend, what do you do then when you're not working anyway?
take Monday.
We figured that out.
So you just want to raise more money for everybody and one more day off?
It's not a lot. No, it's one of the things that, again, we want to ask, we can discuss more in June when we get into the proposed amendments.
Just kidding.
The thing is, we want to make sure that we keep up with what's being offered around us and what's being offered by the state and other organizations, because as we know, it's a competitive market to hire and retain employees in. And we want to make sure that when we have somebody here, that they feel like they're taken care of and that they don't want to leave for any particular reason, so long as they're.
Poaching in Beaufort County has been profound in the last year, couple of years, so. I give it.
All right. IT department, this is down slightly, but it does include the continuing our agreement with Beaufort County to broadcast all of our council meetings and committee meetings, SoLoco and so forth. It continues with our 25% of our replacement of equipment for our laptops and PCs. We have them on a 4-year rotation cycle, so every year we replace 4-year-old ones and keep our inventory up to date. And again, it renews our software throughout. They manage all the software renewals for our departmental software and our operating software throughout the town. So a large part of their expense and their operating expense is all those software tools, our Microsoft, our databases, and all so forth. This is you. This is the legislative department. We cut y'all 3.4% this year. The biggest reason why is there's no election this year, so we don't have an election expense within the budget. I will say, I'm grateful there's no election, but we have one next year, so in fiscal year 25-26, we'll be rebudgeting that for elections. But that's where your decrease is for this year, is in the election expense. Municipal court, it is up slightly. It does continue the professional development for our staff as well as the judge to go to any trainings that he would like to. It does continue to support for our 2 judges and our judicial services with the detention center, as well as continuing our contract with the 14th Circuit for public defenders for indigent defense. Police department, this one, as you can see, is up about 1.6 million. Go to the operating, again, they got a 1.3 million from the feds for equipment. So out of that 1.65, 1.3 of that is the equipment replacement that we're getting the funds from the federal government for.
I'm curious, it's not a town expense, but the Beaufort County, have they got any plans to expand, I don't know what to call it, lack of a better term, a jail, size of it?
My understanding is they're actually looking with, is it Jasper and Hampton to do a regional facility?
I believe they purchased land over by Oldfield, for a projected build-out of a whole new facility to include a portion of that being a juvenile detention area where we no longer will have to transport up to Columbia. That is, I think, 5 to 7 years out, though.
They're also looking to, I think, move the whole sheriff's office facility and everything there as well. It's like 100+ acres. But I know Chairman Passman has mentioned at Soloco and some other places that he's talking to area, the other counties around about making it a regional facility instead of us having one, Hampton having one, Jasper having one, just maybe looking at, especially for the juvenile side of it.
I would think that they'd probably have a courthouse there as well, wouldn't you?
I don't know.
Prevent transporting.
I've spoken briefly with the sheriff. I don't know everything that it entails yet, Mayor, but I can find out.
Yeah, I was just curious.
I don't know
It makes
if-
sense to
Okay.
have it centrally located as well as a courthouse, so you don't have to, somebody's got to go to court, you don't have to drive them 30 miles away or 20 miles away. And
I think they've contracted for design, but I've not seen anything yet. The projects in watershed resiliency, this one's down a little bit, and the reason being is, remember, we talked about we moved Mark in the part-time position over to executive, so that reduced the salaries, benefits, and operational there a good bit to offset that. Public Services Department, as you can see, this one is actually up quite significantly. That has to do with 3 new positions that are proposed, as well as looking to replace several pieces of equipment, and also purchasing new equipment to maintain, like the new Riverside barn, some tractors, trucks, trailer equipment to be able to operate and have a crew to manage and equipment to manage our new facilities that are coming online. Townwide, as we talked about earlier, this recognizes potential increase for residential garbage and recycling. It also allocates for cybersecurity insurance, which is new. It's something that we've been working on pricing this year, but one of the things that local governments and other entities are at risk at is cyber attacks. So we're working to get some cybersecurity insurance that will help cover any costs associated with recovering from that, whether it's losing servers or the time and energy that it takes to get back up and running. So we're working through, there's actually a state contract for that we're working through to get pricing on right now and have that included in the budget for next fiscal year.
Do we run a parallel, do we have parallel servers, or do we have anything that's separate but safe? you know, like you do all your backups and everything, or if we got hit with a cyber attack, it would cross over from one to the other?
No, everything is separate and safe.
Everything is what?
Separate and safe. So we have things, we back up, and if something happened, we can restore from where we were the previous day pretty quickly.
Stephen, on the top up here in the blue where it says, on the far two right columns where it says difference from fiscal year 23 budget, is that supposed to be from 24?
Yes. Yeah.
Just a typo, I got you.
Anyone surprised for finding the one typo?
I just want you to know I'm paying attention.
Doctor on paper every app. Keep on it, save you some money.
All right, so that's the general fund. Like I said, went through department by department and talked about some new things as well as some changes and increases, decreases throughout, over fiscal year 24, not 23, in most places. And so now we're going to go into our special revenue funds. These are our hospitality tax and our local accommodations tax funds. These are not nearly as detailed as the general fund, so I don't anticipate us to.
Wish that crab was red.
Say the crab was red?
I say, yeah, if it was red, it would be ready to eat.
So proposed hospitality fund, as you can see, it is proposed to be about $340,000 more than current fiscal year. This has to do with the growth that we see in the, not just businesses, but also the people and the amount of people that are eating out and buying prepared food and beverage. That is continuing to increase. It's about 10% over where it was, or where it's, where we're anticipated to end up this current fiscal year. Where you can see in the bottom, the expenditures, they go two places. The biggest is to CIP fund, to fund capital projects, and the others to the general fund to offset expenses related to park maintenance. Talk about some of that in just a minute. So this shows you the pie chart version of that. And this goes over specifics of where we transfer the funds out to. So as you can see, about 5 million transfer out to capital projects, and these are the different projects that are being funded by the hospitality funds. Pause and let y'all read. And as you can see, most of them are related to parks and tourism-related activities, which is the primary purpose of these funds. Then we transfer into the general fund. Again, the primary purpose is for tourism and parks and maintenance. So you will see a lot of it has to do with public services, offsetting a good portion of their salaries for park maintenance that they do throughout the town. The civic events they support, roads, parks, landscape maintenance, and the Rotary Center operations that we have for power, utilities, and everything for that being rented out, Squire Pope Carriage House. And it also pays for our street lighting and our, and this is where our partnership for the regional transportation partner, we take funding from here to support that because it helps move people around that are here to visit for tourism-related activities.
So in the future, Stephen, couldn't we use a lot more of this for the Squire Pope once it becomes our welcome center?
Yes, sir. And if you look up underneath there, you'll see
Fund it with this?
that personnel cost is at 235. A lot of that is going to support the positions for the welcome center.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
So the local accommodations tax fund, this is generated on 3% of the gross proceeds from people staying in hotels or Airbnbs or VRBOs or anything like that, overnight stays. Local ATAX funds come directly to us from those entities. State ATAX funds go to the state and then get distributed down to us. That's the difference, mostly between the two, and the state's 2%, local is 3%.
Why is it so much lower this year?
So we kind of hit on that a little bit Tuesday, but what we're seeing is that's a trend. We're seeing less people, lower numbers within the hotels, and the revenue that's coming in right now is slowly decreasing.
I knew Hilton had projections and stuff, but we're seeing that.
We're seeing that as well.
In our own.
Yes, sir. So, like we talked about earlier, we like to make sure that we estimate and use numbers that are realistic on what we're seeing, so we don't end up in a situation where we're overestimating revenues and obligating, because again, a lot of these transfer out to either capital projects or to the general fund. If we end up overestimating that, then we end up hurting other funds within the budget that we would have to go back and fix. So we like to make sure that we're using good estimates and being prepared for any fluctuations.
That'll look good.
So with the local accommodations, 3/4 of it goes out to capital projects, and then about 1/4 of it goes to the general fund. So these are the capital projects that we support with the local accommodations tax. Again, you can see the Squire Pope Carriage House, park improvements, our board park improvements, pedestrian safety, and so forth. And then we also transfer into the general fund to offset, again, you'll see with the communications and community outreach, the personnel costs there. Part of that would be to cover the Welcome Center as well as our events and tourism activities that we put on that people may come and visit. This is where our Bluffton Ambassador Program is covered. If you remember last year, we used to charge costs for special events for the police to be out there. What they would do is they would add that as part of the request they were making in their state aid tax funds. We said, instead of them asking for money just to reimburse us what the police are costing, let's just cover the cost for the police being out there, just remove that from requests they have to make. So anything that receives accommodations tax funding, the police provide protection, and we cover that cost through transfer ins from the local and state aid tax fund.
That was a good thing.
Or local aid tax fund, sorry.
Simplifies it.
Yes. It just, again, all we were doing was asking them to give them a grant so they can turn around and then pay us back for the police being out there. So it just simplified it. I know it made Mary O'Neill happy.
It did.
So if we can make Mary happy,
I mean,
it makes me happy.
makes sense.
So, then the new thing, again, the affordable housing, hit on that a little bit Tuesday. We're allowed to use 15% under state law to now support affordable housing. That funding comes off the top of our A-tax, the first 15%, based on the way the law was written, you can take off for affordable housing, and we changed that. So,
Sort of change.
so that would be about 200,000. Again, with the local accommodations tax funds, this is what we're proposing to go and support programs like the Neighborhood Assistance Program, as well as our Regional Housing Trust Fund. So now we go into Stormwater Fund. So these funds come from the utility fees as well as the fees that they charge to do inspections or permit review. This gives you a comparison of where we are around the county. As you can see, we're $115 annually. This goes on the tax bill. And we're a little higher than Beaufort County, but we're lower than Town of Hilton Head, Town of Fort Royal. So we're kind of right at about the average of what's being charged throughout the county.
Stephen, when I was looking through one of these graphs or pages, I saw, the example of our tax bills.
Yes, sir.
On the, what was it, a $400 and something thousand house. I didn't realize that we pay Beaufort County stormwater fees.
You shouldn't.
You should.
That's a countywide infrastructure fee, sir, that they charge, and the countywide infrastructure fee is for Beaufort County to collect from our residents who pay stormwater utility fees to the town, but they collect it from Town of Bluffton residents to maintain Beaufort County stormwater infrastructure within our jurisdictional boundaries, if you will. Biggest expenses, Buckwalter Parkway and Bluffton Parkway for all the storm drain inlets and what have you. So that's the CWI fee that you see on there, and that's what it is, countywide infrastructure.
It wasn't a very large
$4.49.
Yeah, but I don't ever recall
That's what it
seeing
is.
that.
It's been there for a number of years, believe it or not.
have enough zeros on it for me to catch my eye.
Well, if it was a true stormwater fee, it would be the $100 there. that they-
I mean, I know we have our stormwater,
Right.
but
But that's what that
I'm
is.
looking at it that we're paying them and us, and we're all in Beaufort County, so. Anyway, I got it, that's fine.
So this shows you where the revenues are generated from. Then what that looks like is dollars. So you can see about 2 million is generated from our stormwater utility fee. About 385,000 is generated from license and permits, for a total of 2.46, and that's a little bit of a decrease over the previous year. Again, just in like we showed with building permits, where we're seeing those continuing to kind of slow over where we were a couple of years ago. We're anticipating that to continue to stay a little lower from where we were, from them doing permit and inspections.
What do we do with that dock fee?
Well, there's not much there to do with it. Yeah, and honestly, there's nothing currently programmed that would be eligible to use those funds.
I guess potentially, we could probably use it for our maintenance of the dock, that we stain it a couple times a year. If we had to do some work, maybe potentially we could.
There's not much money there?
No, I don't know.
We can find out how much is sitting in there and let you know, because I don't.
Well, it's not a big number, like thousands of dollars, then I'm
Yeah,
not worried
it's
about it.
thousands of dollars.
I don't think it's tens of thousands, but it's probably thousands.
Did we use any of that on Calhoun Street?
May have.
Probably, because I know it was up there pretty good at one point, but, just one question on the stormwater utility fee. Only see,
Which one are you? Are you on the same slide I was looking at?
yeah,
Okay.
so is that $90,000? 9,000.
Increase for the stormwater utility fee?
So, yeah, so if we only had 90 houses, or not even 70 houses come online, you know what I'm saying? It's, you know what I'm saying, from last year.
You go ahead.
It's the increase in the admin fee that the county is gonna assess us for next fiscal year. So they collect an administrative fee and it's increasing. So otherwise it would have been a lot more of the budget change.
So they're charging us more than they used to? for
Correct, yes.
administration?
Yes,
So
sir.
they charge us, just like property taxes, they charge us to actually bill everybody on our behalf.
It was 1.5 or 2% or something.
It's like $2 and,
I know we went through it when we changed the stormwater fee.
We do a concurrence letter each year to the stormwater utility for the administration of gathering our funds, because we don't have the mechanism to capture those funds as stormwater utility fees. So they obviously put it on the billing, they get the funds, and then they cut us the check for it. So it's for the administration of collecting the fees and then paying it back. We do have some cost sharing efforts that we participate in as well, mostly to keep MS4 compliance with the Clemson Extension Low Country Stormwater Partners for Carolina Clear for outreach and education. So we just cost share that amongst all the municipalities.
it's in here, yeah, it's increasing too.
Yeah, I know,
Dollars.
before we made it a set amount, remember, they had to compute size of the lot and everybody's bill.
There are two different fees.
Cut that out.
Two different fees. So when you were looking at the SWU fees that we're comparison to 130 at the county and we're 115, those are actually our stormwater utility fees that we collect and that they collect from Beaufort County residents. In addition to the stormwater utility fees, we also pay a stormwater utility administration cost. This is their staffing cost for people such as Natalie, working the magic with the numbers for generating that we're gonna get roughly $2 million in SWU fees, sending those taxes out, collecting our fees, getting them in. It's just the admin fee, it's staffing
So
to run the utility.
what they charge us $4.10 per billing, per account that they bill. So that comes up to $67,000 a year. So that was $2 a change, so it's up about a couple dollars. So that ate up about 30,000 plus of the revenue we would have had increase over the growth.
So you don't have the option to counter offer them when they make it?
Because their option would be you either pay it or you bill it yourself. And,
It would cost us more.
and actually, we're cheaper than others. They charge Port Royal and City of Beaufort $567 per account. And then they charge to bill unincorporated Beaufort County, their own, that they're billing their own people, is $19 per bill.
Okay, a sleeping dog's lie.
So again, if we went back to them, they could say, this is what we charge to collect it, or collect it yourself. And it would cost us a lot more to do that.
And we've signed a long-term agreement as well, intergovernmental agreement on the stormwater utility that's not up for renewal for several more years yet.
We signed that a long time ago.
And we've renewed it since I've been here. We've renewed it twice, I think. That says how long I've been here.
Thank you for helping pull that out. So where does the expenditures go? About a quarter to salaries, a quarter to operating, about a third to capital projects, and then about 11% transfers to the general fund, and that helps offset camp staff over in stormwater. And then we transfer out to pay the debt service. This is what that looks like numerically. And as we've been showing, you can see the transfer out there to CIP fund. All of those are going towards, and I would say for second, we could do the spreadsheet like we did for CIP projects. We didn't have that in. And same thing for general fund.
Yes, yes.
I did it for the general.
Yep.
Yeah. So, but you can see, again, these are all go for sewer and drainage projects, and then to the general fund to offset chem staff and stormwater, and then debt service to pay the debt, the general obligation bond. Then we'll go into the debt service fund. So we do have a legal debt margin that we are allowed to go before we have to go to a bond referendum. It's 8% of our assessed value. As assessed value increased from 328 million to 415 million this year. Debt limit increased by about $7 million that we could legally borrow without going out to a referendum. Currently, what we have out for debt is a little over 7 million for general obligation debt. And then what we have left is about 26 million that we could borrow against if we wanted to without a referendum, which means that we're only about 21% leveraged on our debt limit for general obligation bonds.
And this 7, is that what we still owe on the police?
Yes, sir.
That's the only one, right?
So these two,
Other
the
than
general obligation. One is the stormwater capital projects that we
Right.
did in 2020. And then the other one is the law enforcement center for 2010 that we did back in 2010.
Oh, so those two.
Those two are both general
That's
obligation.
all, so we're down to 7.1,
Yes, sir, if you look,
not including the TIF.
correct. So if you look over on the right, the ones that are highlighted in blue are our general obligation bonds. You can see at the end of this fiscal year, we'll have 3.625 outstanding for the stormwater one and a 3.5 left for the law enforcement center. And then those show you our principal and interest payments for next year. The other bonds that we have are special revenue bonds. These do not count against our debt limit because they are based on this particular revenue source. That is our TIF funds. And again, once our TIF, all of our funds here are set up to, our bonds are set to expire when our TIF expires. And when that happens, all of our TIF revenues will then move into our general fund or to capital projects, whichever way we want to use them at that time. So we have the one that was issued in 2006. And then we have the one that we issued in 2023. That was the 10 million for New Riverside.
So the GO bonds expire when?
So the stormwater one is 2040. The police are 2034.
Okay.
TIF ones, they're all set to expire in 2033 or 34, depending on the timing of the 10-year repayment, which fiscal year that.
But our return is, we could do them faster than that if we wanted to. I mean, if
We could.
but how do I tell what we're using out of that TIF return to pay on it? If that made any sense.
Interest, yeah, that's,
No, I mean, we're paying it down.
The TIF versus what we're using.
We're receiving more than what we're applying, correct?
so yeah, I mean,
We don't have the TIF as a special fund, so you can.
right, so the TIF revenue is projected for 4.7 million next year. And so the total debt service is 640. So that means about 4.1 million in TIF revenue can be transferred to CIP for capital projects. 4.1 million, yeah.
So if we weren't using it for capital projects, we could use it to pay down the debt sooner. Again, the way it's set up, though, is our TIF is extended through the life of the bonds so that they expire at the same time.
But our principal, just like on a home mortgage, will continue to offset. I mean, you know, your equity, whatever you want to call it, will grow. So, I mean, that was the thing that caught my eye the other night is we're not upside down on interest.
Correct.
That's the best part.
Well, and every year, that 4.1 will grow. I mean, if that's what it is this year.
Right.
Yes, it will
With
continue
any
to grow
development
through development.
whatsoever, then that'll continue to get,
And we'll,
become more and more of a revenue source to operate the town or CIPs or whatever.
Right. Correct.
Like having money in the bank.
so this tells you where the debt service revenues come from. As you can see, 49% of them are property taxes. That's your TIF and general fund. And then we have the transfer in from the prior year fund balance, as well as transfer in a stormwater fund. Numerically, this represented here. So when that shows property taxes, again, that's mostly, like Chris was talking about, the transfer in from the TIF, as well as what we're transferring in from the general fund to cover the debt. And then license and permits, as well as the transfer in from the stormwater fund and transfer in from prior year fund balance. What's it being used for? As we talked about, capital projects. 78% of it is going for capital projects, the biggest being the TIF fund, which is going to support the new Riverside Barn for next year. The rest of it is going to pay off the debt that we see for the GO bonds and the TIF bonds.
Where are we on the Buckwalter at the multi-jurisdictional park? When does that end?
Interesting question.
So if you want to talk quick
Where
about
you're at on that? We can do some study and send it.
Yeah, so we have compiled everything and provided it to legal, and they're in the process of writing up a legal memo to provide to the county on where we stand with the MCIP revenues and what we think is still owed to us and that it should be terminated. The current expiration date, I can't remember off the top of my head, 26, I think it is. Yes.
No, our research
Shows that we believe that the obligations of revenue generation has been met to cover the
TCL. Culinary School.
The Culinary Institute. So we are showing that's been met, so our argument is that it should be expired.
So we should be receiving our share of those funds now.
That is our stance. We still have to communicate that to them and see what their position is.
See what road.
So last year,
10 years ago.
Yeah.
This has been it's been a very confusing.
Oh, are we talking, how much money are we talking about, roughly?
That's owed to us? What was it, like,
Yes.
something?
200,000, like 300,000, I think our estimation. And that's through current.
And then that would complete this process, and that agreement is void and null.
That would be our argument, that's what our argument is that everything that was supposed to be generated to cover the costs associated with the infrastructure has been met. And at this point in time, we feel that everything's been, should expire and the revenue should just return.
Because the county's been out, so the only person left wasn't the school still involved in this somehow, or just us?
They do have an obligation, part of the agreement. I don't know where they stand on their side of it though.
Okay. And it's part of our request that we're gonna send from legal to legal is for them to show us is to show the finances they have compared to what we're showing. Because we feel confident in our numbers, we wanna see what they're showing.
Gotcha.
Because there's nothing else to build.
Except that road between Washington Square and,
That's not part of it.
So, starting to wrap up here, fund balance. This gives you an estimate of where we were for fiscal '23 actual, where we're estimating to be at the end of this current fiscal year, and then where we're projected for fiscal year '25. And as you can see, a lot of that is coming off of the CIP. And in '23, we're at 21 million that we were carrying forward. '24, we're anticipating to be 15 million, and next year, if we continue to complete projects at the rate that we're going, we'll have it down to just a couple $1 million. So that,
Goes as kudos to
Kim over there for continuing to push our projects forward and getting them moving and getting them constructed. So to summarize, this is, again, the proposed consolidated budget. It shows everything that we had talked about tonight, except for the CIP, which we'll go over in a couple weeks. And summarizes that we are looking at a total budget of a little over 90,620,000, which is a 2% decrease overall from the previous year. It does show a 2.4% increase for general fund, and then some of that is offset from other funds decreasing from previous budget year.
I think I saw somewhere in here, I guess our budget's doubled in 4 years, basically. Is that what I interpreted?
No.
4 years? 4 years? 4, yeah, somewhere in there.
So to summarize,
34.5 or something.
I want to say applied, we were at 65 million.
So that was 3 years.
Part is the additional funds that we're budgeting as well.
Yeah, because if you remember, last year was the first year we showed local ATAX and hospitality as funds, so that added, it was $6-7 million last year.
I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
Well, and that bond added $10 million.
Yeah. So we had a couple bond issuances, we had the 5 million for Geo and then 10 million for Tech. And then there's about a year and a half where kind of capital projects slowed down, so as revenue built up for capital projects, we weren't spending as much with COVID, so.
Yeah, the biggest part of that 5 and 17.
Maybe that could be the theater. All right.
She's not in here. She would have come in there.
So to summarize, today is the 16th. We're here on the Town Council Budget Workshop 1. We've gone through everything except for capital projects. We'll come back May 30th and we will workshop capital projects. Between tonight, the questions that were asked, any questions that you may have that we didn't go through tonight that you have as you go through the budget, or anything over the next week or two, please feel free to let us know. We'll be more than glad to research and bring anything back at the second workshop so that we can make sure that we get all of council's questions answered, get you somewhere where you feel comfortable with how we're moving forward, and get ready for second reading and the public hearing for June 11th. With that, any more questions?
From anyone?
I just reading the slide. I just read the slide.
You said if you have any question, come and see you tomorrow.
Does anybody have any? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Amen.
We are.
Thank you very much. And